Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of American Rambler. I'm your host, Colin. Thank you for listening to the podcast. On today's show, I have part 2 of my talk with actor and director Lou Antonio. Lou wrote a book a few years back. It is called Cool Hand Lou, My 50 Years in Hollywood and on Broadway. Very good book, well written. It is funny, gives you a good sense of the Hollywood lifestyle and the characters involved, all the actors he meets, and the politics of making movies and making television to some degree, and how Lou navigated that. If you listened to part 1, I hope you enjoyed that, and thank you for your patience as I put part 2 together. It was kind of one of those long talks that was borderline between 1 and 2 episodes, so I decided to split it up a bit, as I did with my Emery Thomas podcast from a few weeks ago. I split that one up. I don't know what it is, but lately the podcasts have been kind of long. Maybe because of COVID, people just want to talk more, or just, I like talking to people that have a lot to say. So I don't mind if we go long. Can always split it up into 2. And if you enjoy one, hopefully you will enjoy the other. So part 2 is coming up. I put out a request a little while ago for a episode on Ask Me Anything. So far, no questions. If you listen to the show and enjoy it, you ever wanted to ask me anything or give any kind of feedback, doesn't necessarily have to be a question. Can be about just about anything. This is going to be a episode for you, the listeners, and I know my audience is small, but I've got a lot of episodes out there, so hopefully I can scrape together enough feedback for one episode, but if not, whatever, I'll move on. But whoever gives me the most questions or gives me the best feedback, you will get a free copy of Blake Ball's book on Charlie Brown. I have a new copy, so it hasn't been read, it's not dog-eared, I haven't written it in or anything. It is a brand new copy of Blake Ball's book, and you can get that if you give me the most questions. The opportunity for you, the listener, to chime in and be a very, very minor celebrity. But you can also support the podcast in other ways. You can buy my book, Marching Masters, Slavery Race in the Confederate Army During the Civil War. I get between 80 cents and $1 for the hardcover, so, I want that dollar burning a hole in my pocket. So please check it out on Amazon, and you can leave a 5-star review there or on iTunes. You can follow me at Twitter and Spotify, where all the back episodes are free. There is no paywall. Again, my audience is small, and I do this as a service to the wider world of writers and readers and podcast lovers and listeners. So you can get 200 episodes if you're interested, going back to James McPherson, who's number 5 or 6, I think, in the role there. Just do a search. But, you can support the podcast that way. I'm not going to ask for any money. Just buy my book and follow me on social media, okay? What's been going on? Slept in today, and it felt good. All week, it was kind of going on 5 or 6 hours of sleep with the kids in school, and just stuff going on, hard to sleep in during the week. I mean, not that I should be, but it's hard for me to get to sleep before midnight, even when I lay down at 11 or 10:30 some nights. It takes me an hour to fall asleep. So last night was great. Nobody was here. I was by myself. The windows were open, and I woke up, went back to sleep at some point. It was daylight, and next thing I knew, it was 10:30. So feeling pretty good. Got the coffee. I'm not a morning person, so this day is going to fly by, but feeling good and like I can get things done. Getting this podcast finished, and there's another one down the road that I got to do, so I have to be on it with this stuff. Getting them out there a couple times a month. Watched the Red Sox lose last night to the Yankees, which is always a not great feeling. They did come back a little bit toward the end, but you could just tell it wasn't their night, and this is a big series, so baseball doesn't get much better than this. The fall, Red Sox, Yankees, playing at Fenway, playoffs are on the line for both of these teams, and the Yankees have had a weird season, as have the Red Sox. Red Sox started out great, have not had a second half that's all that great, but have been playing well in September. They got those weird blue and gold uniforms on, and the Yankees have similarly been up and down. People picked them to win the division, and then they sort of stumbled for a while, and they're coming back now. So it is a classic race, Red Sox and Yankees. And I know the Rays are number one team, and they're probably going to go all the way, if not get close. But they're just, I don't know. I don't enjoy the Red Sox-Rays games. There's no real rivalry there. Fenway was full last night. Boston was rocking. Eckersley was doing the play-by-play. So that's what playoffs baseball is really supposed to feel like. And I just don't feel it when the Red Sox play the Rays, especially when they're down in Florida in that horrible enclosed stadium they have that's barely full of any people. You hear things about the Athletics who can only get 4,000 people to their games. That's pretty sad for a competitive team. So Boston, always a great sports town. The fans are always there supporting the Red Sox, and this time of year, you really need them to get behind the team. And it's been a frustrating year in a lot of ways, but they've still been a very good team. So it's been nice to catch up and watch a full season. And I know there have been problems with COVID and everything, but it's really helped me relax. And I wonder if I'd had the ability to watch these games on the MLB app as I do now. I mean, that thing didn't exist in the early 2000s when I was in grad school, but I really would have loved to have been able to watch all the games at night during the baseball season. I think that would have helped me relax a bit after all the stresses of grad school. It was just kind of hard to relax. You just felt like you needed to be doing work all the time, and I would like to have kicked back with a game at night. And certainly the playoffs I did get to watch, but keeping up with the regular season teams, they had some great teams in the early 2000s. Would like to have seen that. But, the technology wasn't there, so what were you going to do? So I am loving it now. There are a lot of things about baseball these days that bothers me, but it is still a great game. And I think if you took someone from the 19-teens or 20s and sat them down in Fenway, it would be very familiar to them. I mean, the game hasn't changed that much. We're still talking, 4 bases and 3 outs and 3 strikes and all that stuff. The uniforms have changed a bit, but I think the game has stayed fairly consistent. And certainly with all the home runs being hit now, that's more like the Babe Ruth era. And still trying to do a baseball podcast. I've reached out to the guys at Two Strike Noise. We're going to do that at some point, but I've been lazy lately. Maybe we'll do something after the season and kind of recap, but I will be looking forward to that. All right, well, I have talked long enough. Here it is, part 2 of my talk with Lou Antonio. Well, in Cool Hand Luke, you play Koko, who sort of vacillates between hating Luke and then to be sort of one of his devoted followers, his friends on the camp. How did you prepare for that role? Did you read the book before the shooting started? What did you do to become Koko?
No, I didn't read the book. It's funny that the author of the book, I had dated his sister, but they had different names. So I didn't know I was dating his sister at one point in my life.
Really?
She was a wonderful actress, beautiful woman. And not until the whole thing was over, when I saw her and she said, that was from my brother's book, Cool Hand Lou.
He was an interesting guy, Don Pierce.
Yes, he was. He was just teetered on being a bad guy. Personally, I think like you would see him sticking up a grocery store, and but he never had that kind of success. The book was successful, but he'd never been on a set like that. And he would just sit and study what was going on, learning. He was not an outgoing guy, but he says you have to be. And he was just a good guy, and he was there. Never whispered, "Oh, you're doing it wrong" to the director or anything. He was just there learning. I appreciated his confidence in us and in himself for being a newcomer to all this stuff. He was a good man.
Yeah. Well, if people don't know much about the history of the movie was shot in Stockton, correct? Stockton, California,
Yeah.
not the South.
Yes.
But it looks hot enough there. It looked pretty hot. And
we're used to whatever you do.
yeah.
But at least we're not on a soundstage having to do a sense memory about heat.
Yeah, it looked like the South, that's for sure. But they kept it vague. I don't think they really say where the movie's set. I know the book it's Florida, but the movie.
No, I think you're right.
Were you kind of close to anyone on the set, or did you just kind of do your own thing? Like, what do you remember about the shooting in the movie specifically? All the characters there.
Well, when you're out of town, you have a tendency, to go out for a drink at the end of the day shoot, and when you're out of town, you can work 6-day weeks. SAG says that's okay. So you didn't have much time for horseplay, but because of just us guys, later that one wonderful actress washing the car, but we had ourselves. We would drink at night, and the motel that we stayed in Stockton had a dance floor and sort of a band, but they definitely had they had a jukebox that you could play music, and we would dance with each other. Bobby Drivers was wonderful, and I forget the name of his character, but he's the one who had a scar, an appendix scar, a real one, and we're going to bed one night, and he's in the top one, and somebody in his says, "What scar?" And he said something. And somebody says, "What's that scar for?" And he says, Bobby, who was a wonderful actor, said, "What scar?" I mean, so we had that freedom. But I remember once also that when Paul was alone after his mom had died, and he gets the not the guitar but the other thing with strings and plays
banjo.
Banjo, and just sort of plucks out, "I don't care songs. I say get my mom." Sings a song about his mom to his song, but just him in the bunkhouse. But all of us actors, because there were little holes in the set below, we wanted to watch him do that. We adored John. What's his name?
Newman.
And we found a little Newman. Yeah, we found the little holes to look and watch him, because he wanted to do the scene all alone in there, which is the way it was written anyway. I mean, we did things like that. We had such respect for him and admiration, and we liked him. He's a good guy. Gee.
Yeah. No, I've never really heard a bad thing about Paul Newman, but so you were like underneath him, watching him do that? Like he was raised above you on the set?
He was on the set, and it was, I think of it as a ship. And he was on the ship. And the side of the ship had holes in because they just built it to support his level. But almost all of us that cared got down there and wanted to watch what Paul would do with the scene.
Yeah. Well, it's a great movie in so many ways, but when you're looking back on it, like, obviously, Paul Newman was a star and everything, but to see the other guys that are in that went on to great careers, either as leading men or character actor. I mean, Harry Dean Stanton is great character actor, Strother Martin, but Dennis Hopper's in it, Joe Don Baker's in it. I mean, it's just an unreal cast.
But who's the big guy? Who's the big guy? Who
George Kennedy
won an Oscar for it?
George Kennedy.
George Kennedy. Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't think much of him. He seemed to be acting all the time. But he knew just what he was doing. Really? What? Because sometimes you'd have to do a substitution because George would be acting, but I think he saw it as the character. But it surprised us all, and he was such a good guy. We were thankful that he got that. We liked him so much. We liked it that he got an Oscar for it.
Yeah, I think there's so many great there's so many great moments in that movie, but there is a definite tenderness to the performances too, especially with with George Kennedy. I mean, that's a real critical role because he starts out as being a real asshole towards Luke, but then he turns around, they become best friends. But certainly Newman just gives a terrific performance there. One thing I wanted to ask you about with your role, there's this, I don't know if you remember, there's this one scene where this is after Luke has been kind of beaten down. He's got the chains around his legs. He's kind of being the errand boy for the bosses on the chain gang. And you sort of flick your cigarette at Luke. Do you remember that scene? You're smoking, you kind of flick your cigarette
where he's
out.
digging a hole?
That?
If it's the one...
Well, he's kind of...
Is that where he's digging the hole?
No, it's the one where he's kind of running around delivering water, but your character, you flick a cigarette at him. I wonder if that was in the script or not. Do you remember?
I don't know. But
that's okay. But
there was one... Yeah, there was one thing that was wonderfully written and directed by Rosenberg, in which he's now succumbing supposedly to the boss man. Yes, but yeah, boss, and
right.
he digs a hole, and we just look at him with disdain, and well, we lost him because we all quote unquote admired him so much. His character.
Yeah, it's though the book is even more brutal. I mean, when I was reading it, I said, "Wow, they they toned it down a bit in the movie." But I think there were some scenes that were added that were really great. That made the movie even better, I think, than the book. But that's funny that you dated Don Pierce's his sister. That's funny.
Yeah.
And
who wrote the screenplay? Do you have it down in your notes? Who wrote the screenplay?
I don't have it in front of me. I think Don Pierce co-wrote it with someone. I could look it up if you want.
Yeah, because what happened is at one point they brought in to the set a couple of writers, two guys, and we all kind of went, what's going on here? They wanted a couple of jokes. So they hired these two writers to write a little humor into some scene. We didn't much care for that, but what the hell, they did it.
Okay, I'm bringing up the writing credit. It's Don Pierce and Frank Pearson. That's correct.
Oh, well, Frank Pearson was the number one writer, but they brought in a couple of guys that were just like come in to write a few sentences. No, Pearson was a number one writer.
Okay. Yeah, all right. I'm looking at his
We
credits.
were on location.
Okay.
Oh, they're fierce. They're good.
But it sounds like overall, I mean, pretty much everyone behaved. The shoot went pretty well. There really wasn't much drama other than what was required. I mean, all the actors behaved. Is that fair to say?
Well, one would almost have to define behavior. Some of them were very lonely for their wives. And at one point, which I did not put in the book, is that the producers hired a couple of call girls because we were all on location without our sweethearts, without our wives. And there were a couple of really great-looking call girls that were at our disposal. So you're hearing it for the first time, as is America.
So some of the actors were partaking, shall we say, of what was offered.
Well, no, I can't say that. I didn't watch. I mean, they had girlfriends and marriages and stuff, so I can't comment on that. I mean, just there's a couple of beautiful girls up there. That's all. Right.
What happens in Stockton stays in Stockton, I guess.
Say it again.
I said, what happens in
Stockton? What happens in Stockton stays in Stockton. Yeah, and not much was happening anyway.
Yeah, it sounds like it was probably a pretty dull place otherwise, but I don't know. Just my perception of some of those actors like Harry Dean Stanton and Hopper, they could get in some real trouble, but maybe they did not at that particular time or place.
Well, Harry Dean was just wonderful. I mean, doesn't the movie open with him singing or something? But Harry Dean had that great face, and the part wasn't much. And Dennis, who was just he's had a reputation which was not good as a little bit of not a troublemaker, but not fitting in. But that was Dennis. When you hired Dennis, you took what Dennis brought in, and Dennis was really a talented, not only actor but director and writer. As a matter of fact, I think he had so. I put this in my book. He had so few lines in the movie that a year later he's producing and not directing and starring in a movie called Easy Rider. In 1 year, he jumped from a couple of lines to producing and writing Easy Rider.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny when I saw the movie when I was pretty young, and then as I got older, at first, I didn't know who Dennis Hopper was when I was really young, but as I got older, I said, "Oh yeah, Dennis Hopper's in this." And obviously Joe Don Baker, I kind of missed him the first couple times maybe I saw, because he has kind of a small role. But he had a great career. Do you feel like the movie opened some doors for you as an actor?
No way I can answer that. I was well employed. I did 8 plays on Broadway, and I was making a living at it, so I have no idea.
Okay. Eventually you do make that leap into directing. You seem to have you had a theater attitude to it. Like you didn't think much of television initially. Is that fair to say?
No. Some of the television that even I was in, Movies of the Week and stuff, were really quite good. But there was so much crap that you couldn't respect it as a whole, but only a little bit of pieces here and there. And Dennis Weaver, I had directed in a project that I had written at the Actors Studio, just one act, and he acted in it there. So when he got Gentle Ben, he called me down and he said, "Do you want to act in one? And so you can look around and meet people and then direct one?" And that's the first time I directed because of Dennis. And it went well because I did several more. And the next year, if it was going to be picked up, Dennis wanted me to direct at least half of them, but that didn't happen. I went on to do some other stuff like Sally Fields and Flying Nun.
Right. Yeah, you directed a lot. They were definitely keeping you busy, but long hours. I mean, you're the director, so you can't sleep in. It sounds like you got to be there early. You got to be on top of everything. And maybe just maybe you can describe how it was initially. It sounds like there was a lot of on-the-job training. Is that right?
Well, thank goodness I keep my eyes open as an actor and watch what's going on just out of curiosity, because I worked nicely as a theater actor in New York, and so I was curious about all this. I know that I was. I wrote Dennis was in a movie, and I got a call on New Year's Day. I just moved out. I think I moved to Los Angeles on February 27th. And on January 1st, Dennis called me out to his house in Encino, and he gave me a script to sit there and read. And I read it, and he said, "Well, what'd you think?" And I said, "Dennis, it's shit." He said, "Well, I know that. Do you have any ideas?" So I did a rewrite on it. And then I went to the Philippines because he said, "We can't afford Japanese tanks here." And so I flew they flew me to the Philippines. And I got to fly with his delightful wife, Jerry. What a trip. She's just a wonderful person. And so the trip was fun and we laughed a lot.
Maybe you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but say a little bit more, because you did travel quite a bit over the course of your career. Maybe just talk a little bit more about shooting something in LA versus shooting on location. You seem to prefer shooting on location a lot more. Maybe talk about why that was.
Well, number one, you'd have to name the location rather than just generally location, because each location is a different experience. Anything come to mind?
Well, there's the time you shot in Africa.
Oh yeah,
and that was
that was terrific. They offered me. I remember Brother Jim was over here at my house, and they sent me the script, and it just wasn't very good. And Jim said, "Africa, do a rewrite. Find somebody to do a rewrite." I said, "Yeah, Africa. A trip to Africa for free. Gosh." And so we did some work on the script and went to Africa. I brought my daughters over. Where I worked, it was part of my contract, that my two daughters got a round trip first class ticket to wherever I was working on location, and so they got to see a lot of the world, and that I was very appreciative of location shooting because of that. But I like locations because it brings a spring to everybody's thinking. It's not the same old, same old. Oh, go to your dressing room. Yeah, go, okay, and a guy will come around with coffee, and there's the snack bar and all that stuff. It was refreshing to be on location usually, even though you did without some niceties. It didn't matter. The imagination seemed to be stimulated by locations.
Well, I could just say as a viewer, I always like when a movie's shot on location, or at least gives the appearance that it is where they say it is.
Mm-hmm.
But you said there's just some very practical things about shooting on location, like no executives are going to come down to the set and kind of poke their nose in what's going on, right? I mean, if you're thousands of miles away, you can kind of do things your way.
Yep.
Yeah.
There was never a problem, but sometimes when a producer would come to a set, I mean, they were smart, but they would affect the actors some. They didn't know if they were being judged or whatever. So I would shoo the producers off the set as much as I could with an explanation. And I would always let a writer stay because they could learn. They never did any rewrites, but two particular young writers wouldn't leave the set. They were just learning too much about filmmaking. And
did you find that you got better performances when you were on location, or did it kind of depend on where the film or whatever?
No, hopefully I got good performance wherever I was.
We've been talking over an hour, 10 minutes now. Do you have some more time for a few more questions?
Yeah, let's make at least another 10. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Do you want to talk a little bit about The Godfather and what happened there?
Well, I'm trying to think. They wanted me to do The Godfather, but troublesome. I was married and we were working to have a baby, and it was doctors and stuff like that. And they said, because I had a slight resemblance to Marlon facially in those days, and they wanted me to play his brother. Nice enough scene, but I think maybe just 2 scenes in the whole movie. And I didn't cotton to the idea that they wanted. I mean, they came to my house in Copland and said, "Well, we don't have any money, Lou, so you have to pay your own way to New York. You have to pay not only your transportation but your living wages there. You get no on spot." I said, "I can't afford it. I simply can't afford it." And they said, "It'd be so good, the casting guy. It'd be so good for your career." And I said, "I can't afford it, guys. You're putting me in the hole when I need to save my money for the baby." So that's why I didn't go.
Yeah, you were going to play Fredo.
Yes, That got a wonderful actor, but Casals.
Yeah, I know he didn't do a lot of movies, but everything he did was terrific.
Excellent actor. And the reason they kind of, as I said, that I had sort of a superficial visual likeness to Marlon. So I could have been part of his family.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, that's such a huge, iconic movie. And, I mean, you explain why that didn't happen. But I know you had your reasons, but it sounds like in the book, you kind of regretted not just going for it and doing the part. Or am I misreading you?
Well, I got all that advice. I don't think I personally did. Or maybe I did, but I didn't feel it because I went on to something else. I was busy doing something else. But it would sound, stupid to turn down The Godfather, even though it wasn't a terrific part. But to work with those two actors, Marlon and Pacino, would have been a delight. I so respected their talents.
Well, and you didn't necessarily know it was going to be this huge movie that won, Oscars and produced sequels. I mean,
oh no,
right?
But look at how you had Coppola. You had a pretty dadgum good script. I even read the book first, and said, yeah, I can see this could be a movie, yeah, and that kind of stuff. But then when they got so picayune about that it would cost me money, I know that sounds silly. Oh my God, you could have done The Godfather, but you wouldn't have made any money on it. Number one, the part wasn't that terrific, but it would be a prestige movie because they had Marlon right off and so forth.
Right.
But it was the part was not a thrill to me. I would love to have worked with Marlon Brando, but it wasn't right for me at that time as a person.
No, that makes sense. And as an actor too, I mean, you seem more like you would have done Sonny. I could see you more as Sonny Corleone maybe rather than Fredo.
Well, that was talked about quite a bit, and
Okay.
as a matter of fact, there's a thing somewhere, a picture of Coppola's vineyard. Maybe you've seen it, and there's this big kind of like boulder, and on the boulder is a plaque, and I'm listed as one of the people that was up for that part. I even took a picture of it.
I think that might be in the book. Is it in the book?
I might have put it in the book. I hope I did because it was news to me that it was there. Somebody said, "Look, I was just up there buying some wine, and there you were."
Is that an alarm?
I don't know what that is.
Sounds like bad weather.
There's a guy out. Yeah, I don't think the TV's on. There's a guy out in the lawn doing something. Maybe I don't know. I'm not going to worry about it.
Okay, well, you do have a picture. It looks more like it's a notebook. It's a notebook page or something where it's got the cast, the Corleones, De Niro, so on and so forth, and you're listed down there under Jimmy Caan, Don Gordon. So okay, I don't know if it's
that's
exactly
that thing. It's on like a big boulder.
Oh, okay.
It's on a boulder or something.
I see.
Yeah, Coppola put that up on himself up on his lot there near his winery.
Yeah, I see. You seem to have a kind of natural intensity that maybe would have been better suited towards Sonny rather than Fredo, but obviously.
I was disappointed, I must say, that I didn't get it because I knew the guy, and I knew that. I knew him because I'd studied him a little bit when I was up for it. And then I read for it, went up to San Francisco. He had a bunch of actors up there. He had his office up in San Francisco, Francis did. And I went up there and read for it and saw some of the other guys. But then there would be a conversation on the phone that the director, Mr. Coppola, didn't want anybody to hear, but I could say, well, no, I think. And I found out there who he wanted for a couple of other parts too. But it was, and then he shot a 16 millimeter in the basement around the pool, I think. He just set us down there with a cameraman, gave us a setup, like you're in a hotel room now, and we improvised. I forget who I improvised with, but Francis was next to the camera, laughing and because I was making jokes about it was in the fancy hotel supposedly, and there's the bathtub which is in the shape of a heart supposedly, and I just went with it and improvised all over the place, and Francis was just having a good time watching.
Yeah,
didn't get the part, but at least I made him laugh.
Yeah, that's great, and I mean, you didn't have any hard feelings, obviously, about the experience. I mean, you say a lot of good things about Coppola. Obviously, he's a great director. It sounds like he was a very collaborative guy. I mean, he's not, letting you improvise. I think that's a pretty cool thing for a director to do off the bat.
And also for him and the casting guy, Fred Bruce, to come to my house and try to talk me into it.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you had a good experience there. I know you didn't end up in the movie, but that's a pretty great experience all the same. And I don't know a lot about Coppola, but I mean, Godfather was really his first big movie. I can't think of what he directed before that. Can you?
Oh yeah, I was visiting George Peppard one time, an old friend of mine. I understudied him on Broadway. We were friends because we were studying with Lee Strasberg at the studio and all that. And Coppola lived like 3 doors away. And George, mischievous as he was, he went up, snuck out, it was nighttime, he snuck up into his garage and stole something. I don't know what that it was a tire or something like that, just as a
Yeah.
joke. And that's where I met Coppola for the very first time. When he said he came
Okay.
down to warn George about there's some thief in the block. He was just a kind of a little chubby, very warm, very simple guy.
Yeah. So
In that
George,
situation. Yeah.
yeah, no, I've, he's a legend, but I've never. I mean, you hear stories about him, but I know he could be. Things got away from him a bit on Apocalypse Now, but certainly he's had a great career and worked with a lot of great actors. But George Peppard, was he kind of a character? I don't know much about him.
Oh, well, George was a good-looking ex-Marine, blonde hair, blue eyes, 6'1" or something like that, and was studying with Strasberg. And I think we did scenes together there. I think he got into the actor's studio also. I don't quite remember that. But George was very disciplined. And except when he started smoking too much. And I said, George, come on. He said, oh, no, he's new with the filter. You don't get any nicotine at all. But that meant he had to take a double hard breath to get some smoke into his lungs, which was bad. And he died young because of chest cancer.
Yeah.
But George was a comer. He was good looking. I was in class with him. I understudied him on Broadway, so we got to know each other. And he and I even did scenes together. And he was dedicated to being a better actor. He knew he had the looks, and he did some good movies. High Ground, I forget what they were. And then he did his own series called Banachek, which was a 90-minute series. I think it only ran one season or something. But George was just one of those New York guys. Where was George from? I don't remember, but he was an ex-Marine. And we had all kinds of young people. We were all young in Lee's class and at the studio, but mainly in Lee's class. It cost $30 a week. What was it a month? I know it was cheap as hell. And Lee would limit his class to 30 people. And you could do, on Tuesdays, you could do a monologue. You'd have to sign up for there'd be 2 monologues on Tuesdays, and Friday then would be scene work. And it was just that was in his private class, not at the studio. And that's where I met George. We did scenes together. Hatful of Rain, I think, something like that. Whatever was popular. We were always jumping at it. But George was dedicated to the art of acting and was well versed in his reading about stuff. But his damn smoking killed him.
Yeah, he was fairly young. And so I'm looking at his Wikipedia page. He said 65 is when he passed.
Oh, gosh.
But I remember him as a kid on the A-Team. That was kind of his big show in the 80s.
Yeah, I forgot about that, yeah. There were 3 guys, 3 leads on it or something like that, yeah.
Yeah, that was quite the
I never
show,
did.
Mr.
I
T.
never did one of those.
Well, it's funny you mentioned he was in the Marines. Another great Marine actor was Lee Marvin. Did you ever meet him?
Lee Marvin? Is that who you said?
Yeah, Lee Marvin. Did you ever meet him?
No, never met Lee Marvin.
Okay.
Never got to.
So I think it's funny. I feel like we've had a big generational shift, and these guys that were in World War II, I mean, they're not around so much anymore, but a lot of them were actors that did a lot of great work, like Gene Hackman. And I feel like you kind of had to go through maybe the Depression and war to give a certain kind of performance, or I don't know, maybe that's just bullshit. What do you think, Lou?
Probably bullshit, because each person would react individually.
Yeah.
So as a generality, it's bullshit. Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. Well,
is Hackman dead, or is?
No, he's still around. I think he's retired, but he's still around.
Well, yeah, I think he's older than I am.
Yeah, I think he's in his 90s, and I can't remember the last movie he did. He's certainly done a lot.
Yeah,
but it sounds like Once you're in the directing, you're really in it. I mean, you kind of seem to. I know you do some acting later in the 70s, but once you're directing, it seems like you're getting a lot of work. You're doing it, all the time. Did you feel like there was a point where you made a concerted effort, like I want to do more acting, or do you just kind of roll with the directing and just enjoy that work coming in?
Well, I don't even know how it happened except for Dennis Weaver. Said, direct one of these gentle bands, And it went pretty well. And then the word got out, and I directed Sally Fields in Flying Nun and some other half-hour show. But I was still acting. A perfect season in those days was, say, 4 guest shots as an actor and 4 shots as a director. I had a couple of those seasons, which I said, well, this is the way to go. Don't have to give up anything. But it didn't last long because I was acting. The directing job came up more often than the acting jobs.
Well, and it seems like there's 2 cardinal rules with directing. You got to be on time and on budget. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. And one of the things that there's a directing class at the Actors Studio, and this woman had booked a scene for Friday, and the actors were there. 3 actors just wandering around on stage waiting for the director. And she came a half hour late and thought nothing of it. And I chewed her ass out. I said, number one, the director should be the first one on the set, not the last one. And then she started badmouthing me all over town.
Yeah.
She really, she was teaching somewhere and just said, oh, awful Lou Antonio. Didn't know. He's out of his depth. I don't know what she said, but she sure took it out on me. And she was the one that was late. Keep 3 actors waiting around on stage wondering, what do we do? I said, well, should I just have them do the scene? But no, it wouldn't be rehearsed. Well, anyway, yeah, shit like that happens because there's a lot of bad people out there. Angry, jealous people.
After you had a good amount of experience under your belt with directing, did you prefer directing shorter things like a show, 30, 60 minutes, or did you like the more kind of long form things like a longer TV movie or something like that? Or did it not really matter? You're just doing the work?
Yeah. No, the TV movies, someone counted them. Do you have a list of how many I did?
I'm not sure. I know it was a lot.
Yeah, somebody gave me a figure. They said either 28 or 30 movies for television. And I like those because I would get to sit with the writer and the producers, mainly the writers, and work it, and make it better. And it just, and in those days, you had to, if you want to use 2 cameras, you had to say which day you wanted the second camera for. Where now it's, you go in there and say, there'll be 2 cameras there and 2 camera crews. There's no mess with it. But in those days, you had to go through all of that. And so you'd say, well, just give me 2 more days of 2 cameras. No, that costs that much money. And it just got silly that way. That they were watching, they were hurting the show by doing that. But finally we got normal conversation, and I would carry 2 cameras the whole time. Many's the time that I've operated a camera, the second camera.
Yeah, I don't know what people think about acting initially, but I mean, you're working some really long days. I mean, was it 18-hour day unheard of?
Yeah. 15 hour was like normal. Now and then you would run into that, but that made the crew too tired. Very costly. I can't ever remember working 18 hours. Maybe I did, but that was not the norm at all. 15 was kind of normal.
But even a 12-hour day, that's a long day.
Yeah, and particularly for the director, because the director spent the weekend preparing his Monday's shoot. He's working 24 hours a day anyway.
Yeah. Well, again, when I was reading about movies and directors growing up, I had a weakness for reading about movies that went crazy long. It was like a 6-month, 1-year shoot or whatever. But TV, obviously, you're a much tighter schedule. You might be talking, a few days a week or two tops on a TV show, right?
A movie of the week, I think, had a limit of 19 or 20 days for a 2-hour television movie. They usually, one time, I had to shoot one in 13 days because they just didn't have the money, but it was the kind of script that, they were long hours, but the script, it was fine. It worked okay.
Yeah.
It'll kill you, but you can get it done.
Well, and it's interesting, too, to be reading your book about, television in the 70s and to some degree the 80s. There was this perception that good actors or great actors would not do television. Certainly that's changed. But you managed to work with some really great actors in the 70s. Liz Taylor being one of them, but I mean, Rock Hudson, he was another one. You talked about Don Ameche. So obviously, that didn't stop them from doing that kind of work. But that has changed now. I mean, television it's as good as movies are. Some of the actors that you encountered, did they talk about that? Did they ever say to you like, I'm doing TV now, or were they just happy to be acting and do what they need to do? Was there that perception of television?
It's hard to say. There was one point, and I don't know if it's in the book or not, but at one point I had Don Ameche and George C. Scott in the same movie, 2-hour movie. And George I knew. Ameche, when we were kind of sitting around talking, I'd ask him questions about the old days when he was under contract at 20. I learned so. It was so much fun. But then I started directing, and I got a call from my producer. Forget his name, foreign guy. You'd know him. He acted in produced several of his shows. And so I'm in the back, shooting something in the back of a car with him and George. And it's coverage time. And they're on the run. So I staged it so that Don is standing in front of the license plate. So any cop car, anybody passing won't, keeps him safe. And don't ask me why. He wouldn't do it. He wouldn't stand in front of the place. And I said, Don, I don't understand. And I explained to him, and he was just being a pain in the ass. And then I found out why. I got a call from the producer, and I said, what is this? I heard, what is this about Ameche wants to quit? I said, what? Why? He said, well, he tells me you're giving more close-ups to George C. Scott than you are to him. I said, he's counting close-ups? Yeah. So that's the kind of people you'll run into. And he had just won an Academy Award, and George C. Scott had won one too. And there I was with both of them. But George is a dream. But I don't know what was wrong with Ameche. I just don't know. Maybe I should have hugged him every day. I have no idea.
But it sounds like you did smooth things over with him. It had to do with I think it was a relay race that you fit into the movie.
Oh, right. Yeah, I knew he loved his legs, to show his legs. So I wrote, while I'm shooting, I didn't know I was going to have all this trouble with this actor. So I wrote this race and he could be in shorts, and that his character would win. It took me not even half a day, but I put it in the script. We did it, and he was a lot easier to get along with after that.
Yeah, you just had to appease his ego a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, maybe he thought he was second run to George, but I do remember the event and what I came up with to make him feel good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, George.
Also, do I have any? Do I have anything in the book about him and drinking wine?
George C. Scott.
Ameche.
Oh, Ameche.
No, Ameche.
No, I don't. No, I don't remember that.
Okay, I don't know if I put that in or not. I think I did.
What happened? Anyway,
next question.
Was he another guy who said he wasn't drinking so long as it wasn't hard stuff?
Oh, George, yeah, that was hilarious. I don't drink anymore. And he'd opened another bottle of wine and emptied. Wine's not drinking. I love that man. Gosh, he was wonderful.
Yeah, I think if I was in a movie with George C.
Go ahead.
If I was in a movie with George C. Scott, I think I'd be a little nervous too about, living up to that. I mean, he's a big guy. Every movie, he's kind of a big character, George C. Scott.
And George physically is not a big guy, but I mean, he's
okay.
6 foot maybe, but with that voice and that face. But he was delightful to work with. He would do anything I asked him. And I made one big mistake, which I put in my book, about I couldn't get him to do one thing that I wanted. And I couldn't think of the British actor's name, who was an eyebrow actor. He'd always overact a little bit, but with humor. I couldn't think of the guy's name, and I was trying to get George to do that. We did like 2 or 3 takes, and it was my fault. I couldn't find the words for him. And he said, "Jesus, you're making me lose my confidence," which is the worst thing a director can hear, and I put that in the book. The worst thing that a director can do to an actor is make him lose his confidence. And I just felt just so sad for George having to go through that. Like, he snapped out of it, of course, but I thought, never again will an actor never ever say that to me.
No, it sounds like, you did learn a lot of lessons as you went along, and I know you didn't have training necessarily in directing, but just from your own acting and your own experiences on sets, you did learn as you went. But there was a show you did in the late 70s called Dog and Cat with Kim Basinger, who hadn't really blown up yet. But maybe talk about that show. What happened there? It was only on for, I don't know, six episodes or something, but it seemed like it had promise. What happened with that show?
Well, number one, it was opposite Carol Burnett, who was the winner. And it was on, I think, a Saturday. And we beat Carol Burnett every time. 7 shows in a row, we beat Carol Burnett. And suddenly we hear we're being canceled. And it just threw us. Why? Well, this is a puny NBC. Oh, what a bunch of wimps they are. Most network people are anyway. They blame everybody but themselves. And in this case, they said, well, Congress saying there's too much violence on the air, so that's why we're canceling Dog and Cat. Now, I don't know, you never saw the show, but Kim Basinger and I was the veteran, she was the newcomer, and in short shorts, she was gorgeous, funny, and people loved the show. But to be walking down the street in New York, and whatever the name of my character was, Casey, somebody said, "Hey, Casey, how you doing?" That being a big smile on my face. And it was a good show. We had good writers, good directors, and Kim and I had a chemistry which was just fun. And it got canceled. And we couldn't figure it out. And it had to do with somebody who had more power than this other body got us canceled. Saying it because it was not a violent show. It was a funny cops and robbers show. So it's one of those mysteries that you don't know who put the knife in your back and why. It was a hit.
Well, and it seems like one of those things that wouldn't happen today. I mean, given your ratings at the time, I mean, nowadays it would be bigger than just about anything on TV. I mean, it's changed so much in terms of viewership.
Oh my! Oh, that's interesting.
I think nowadays you probably would get, a few seasons on Netflix, maybe, 6 or 10 per season, and it would run for 5 years.
Yeah. Well, it was a good show. Kim was fresh and just an eye catcher.
Yeah.
And in a series like that, which was brand new, everybody, meaning producers and writers, are so nervous. They don't know what's really working because the ratings haven't come in yet, and and they're just in a sweat. Whereas the actor, it's easy. You just come in, whatever they give you, you just do it as best you can. But the poor producers and writers, they're in a bind in a situation like that.
Yeah, it's a tough business, to be sure, and I mean the competition's just unreal. But it didn't slow down your career. I mean, you just keep right on directing. I mean, into the 80s and into the 90s. One of the kind of last projects you worked on was with Heath Ledger? Is that right?
James Spader was the last network.
Okay.
That was an hour show, wasn't worth a damn. And
okay.
But Heath Ledger was a pearl. What a guy. I met him in Australia. We worked over there, and then we came here to America. And he was a teenager. He was a teenager when he burst upon our scene. A nicer guy. He would hang around the set every day just to figure out how movies worked, or how film worked, I should say. And a dear man, good actor, and had that tragic ending. But he was just... I treasure a big 8x10 picture of him and me. Is it in the book?
Yeah, you're on set, I believe.
You don't have to look through the book. Yeah, well, yes, I'm doing something. It's a directing thing, yeah. But he was gorgeous as a man. And then I don't know if it was drugs or whatever, but something went wrong.
Yeah.
With his relationship and then with him. Too bad.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame when we lose that caliber of actor young. I mean, I think of Philip Seymour Hoffman too, definitely a top-notch actor. And I mean, the performance Heath Ledger gave in the Batman movie is just astounding. That's going to live on forever. And it's just an amazing performance.
Wasn't that a brave concept for a cute leading man? It was wonderful. God, it was better than anybody else's that played that part.
Yeah, he's scary in that movie. He's really scary.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. He was truly not a clown with a big grin and doing all that Jack Nicholson stuff. He was terrifying. I urge anybody to see that. He is so good in it.
Yeah, no, I mean, people love that movie. It was just playing here in Richmond a few weeks ago. I mean, they just keep playing it again and again. And it's really that role. Huh. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever... Lou, have you ever been to Richmond, Virginia?
No.
If you ever get a chance, there's a great movie palace here called the Byrd Theater, and it's built in the 1920s or early 30s, and it's just terrific. It's like something they'd have out in LA, but it's our one movie palace here, and you get to see stuff like that, like the older movies and the classics and everything. But I've had you a while, and I if you do have some more time, I kind of want to know, why this book came out in 2017, which isn't that long ago. Why did you want to write a book after all these years?
Well, I was a writer at age 16, as you know. It's in the book. I was getting bylines in the biggest newspaper in Oklahoma and getting paid for that. And I went to college on a journalism scholarship. So I enjoyed writing. And I started writing, looking back, because being a journalist and working for a newspaper, I'd keep notes on stuff. Went to college on a journalism scholarship, and it was and I liked writing. And I didn't want to write a book about personal things like, so-and-so. I didn't want any gossip in it at all. Just a straight book. And I found out, I didn't mean it to be, but everybody says, hey, they laughed and had a good time laughing at it. So that was fun. But I've written all my life, as I say, at 16, to get a byline in the biggest newspaper in Oklahoma. Yeah. And then to be 16 or 17 years old, I'll be watching a movie in Oklahoma City. There'd be a tap on my shoulder in the dark. I'd look up, and it would be a guy saying, Lou, listen, I'm so-and-so. You've got me down for 317. I'm really batting 320.
Yeah.
That's like being a star saying, can I have your autographs or something? I don't know what it's like.
And kind of what are you up to these days? I mean, are you still doing classes and everything?
I still do a class at the Actor Studio out here on a Wednesday where I work with the actors. Salome Jens runs the Friday session, 2-hour sessions, and she does where she makes the actor try to realize the material better. Well, the scene is really about this. So they get both sides, and mine is mainly about the acting for the actors. Try this, try that. Too much tension in your mouth and so forth. So I really enjoy that. But we closed it. I was running it out here with Salome, and we closed it till just almost September 15th and wait for all the disease to get out of the air. So we'll probably go back to 15th if it's still safe enough.
And
what's good about the Actor Studio? Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead, Lou. Actor Studio, go ahead.
Oh, is that you'll see good actors. I mean, experienced actors, and the little ones, the new ones, but mainly the experienced actors still will get up and try something that they've never done. I mean, you'll see an older couple do Romeo and Juliet's balcony scene. Doesn't matter that they're in their 30s or 40s. And that's right. It's the Actor Studio. You can do whatever you want to in that regard. So it's a fun place to be because, as I say, you're not doing it for an audience. You're doing it for yourself. And so many of the times they'll do a scene, and I don't call on people. Salome does on Fridays. You can raise your hand and have a comment. But in my class, I don't. I just go up and whisper something to them. And they do the scene again, and we see the change, and then I tell what I whisper, so the actor can find, and the viewers can find sometimes just a little thing how it can change the scene immensely. And it's fun class.
Yeah, that sounds great. Have you seen that TV show, The Kaminsky Method? It's on Netflix.
I've heard about it. It's with the guy whose father was famous. Who's the actor?
Michael Douglas.
That's it. And then that funny guy. There's another guy.
Yeah. I'm blanking on his name, but I know who you mean. Great actor.
Yeah.
Darn.
Yeah.
Okay. But you should
comedy,
check that out.
Check
it out if you can. I think you might enjoy that show.
Yeah, he turned into a really nice actor too, the Douglas kid. I mean, look what he had to be compared with, for God's sake.
Right,
guy.
Yeah.
Jiminy Christmas. But a very nice man and a good actor.
Yeah, he's done okay for himself. All right, well, Lou, I don't know, unless if you have something else you want to talk about, I'm kind of worried you might drop out again, so maybe we should wrap up here.
Absolutely, sure. Gosh, how long have we been talking? Well over half an hour.
Almost 2 hours. Almost 2 hours.
Oh my gosh. I apologize to all those who were listening. I hope some people were listening.
Because
you asked good questions.
Well, thank you, Lou. And I mean, this is really a special occasion for me. I've talked to some actors, but not someone with your career and the movies that you've done. So this was a real honor for me. I'll just be honest about that. It was a real honor talking to you, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Well, you asked good questions.
Thank you. And I loved the book. I loved the book.
Oh, my God, yes. Yes, it's called. Yeah, but punch the book a minute here. It's called, what's it called?
Cool Hand
Lou? Yes. And you can always order it through Amazon.
Absolutely.
It is a good book, and thank you for reading it.
Yeah, and I will...
Sometime we'll talk some more.
Yeah, I would love that. And I don't know if you could ever get out this way, but if you ever come to Richmond, I think we could probably do a special event for you somewhere.
Well, bless your heart, I don't travel much anymore.
Okay.
Eyesight and age and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I used to love shooting everywhere. Gosh.
Yeah, absolutely.
But thanks for the call. I really appreciate it, and I had fun talking with you. All right, that was my talk with Lou Antonio. I hope you enjoyed that.
Again, his book is Cool Hand Lou, My 50 Years in Hollywood and on Broadway. I'm very glad he was willing to talk to me. Check it out, Cool Hand Lou. Been watching the Rick Rubin, Paul McCartney series on Hulu, Paul McCartney 321, which is pretty fun. Being a huge Beatles guy, a lot of the stories are familiar, but there's some other things that I'd never known about. There was this geeky thing about Hard Day's Night and how they sped up the guitar solo, which I always kind of wondered how George was able to play that. I mean, he was a great guitarist, obviously, but the guitar playing on that solo is kind of superhuman. And I knew George was good, but not that good. And it turns out it was really a studio trick where they played the song at half speed and then sped it up so the guitar solo sounded a lot faster. So you get those kind of Beatles nuggets in the show. It also goes into some of his solo work, so it does give a nice balance. I do love Rick Rubin's beard too, which, that's kind of his trademark thing. McCartney is such an interesting guy because he seems like he has sort of a ADHD thing going on. I mean, he's bouncing around, he's moving. It seems like he can't sit still, but his enthusiasm is great. And, 1 minute he's sort of, oh yeah, of course I'm Paul McCartney and I wrote that. And then another minute he seems a little insecure, like, is that good? Did we do good there? And then, so it's kind of funny that he's Paul McCartney, but there also seems to be this need for good feedback, this need for validation from Rick Rubin. So he's a very interesting guy, obviously all around with the music, but his personality, there's an edge there. I know John was supposed to be the edgy one, but Paul definitely has that, and the competitiveness. I mean, in the control freakery, telling Ringo to basically sit this one out because he wants to play drums on a certain song. And I think when they're talking about back in the USSR, they're actually talking about when Ringo had left for a week or so, or however long it was, and Paul was playing drums on a bunch of songs. So it's very interesting as a Beatle fanatic, and also someone who's really gotten more into Paul McCartney's solo stuff over the years. I was initially always a John guy, but Paul is pretty terrific, and so I do have a lot of his solo work. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I hope you will be listening next time. And again, check out those back episodes, all free on Spotify and iTunes and on Libsyn. I'll be talking with you soon. Take care. Bye.